Story number 1: Badge Swap. I arrived at the Heartland processing facility at 6:30 in the morning on a Tuesday in late March. The weather was clear and cold. I had performed quarterly safety inspections at this location for 3 years without incident. The facility processes approximately 800,000 pounds of beef product per week and employs a standard workforce of 114 people across 3 shifts. The plant manager, a man named Kowalski, met me in the parking lot as I was removing my inspection kit from my vehicle. He appeared fatigued. He told me that the 3rd shift had walked out 2 hours earlier without providing notice or explanation. All of them. He said he had called the corporate office and was awaiting instructions. I told him that the inspection would proceed as scheduled. He nodded but did not appear relieved. I began my standard walkthrough in the refrigerated storage area at 6:45. The temperature logs were in order. Equipment maintenance records showed routine servicing. I documented everything in my notebook using the standard checklist. The storage area was cold and quiet. I could hear the hum of compressors and the occasional drip of condensation. Nothing unusual. At 7:15, I moved to the main processing floor. This is where the work happens. The conveyor systems were running. All of them. The primary line was moving product through deboning stations, trimming stations, grading stations, and packaging. The secondary lines were also active. The machinery was operating at full capacity. No workers were present on the floor. I asked Kowalski if he had activated the lines remotely. He said he had not. I asked if a timer or automated cycle had been set before the shift ended. He said he did not know. He seemed uncertain. I told him to stand aside, and I approached the primary line to observe more closely. The product was moving through each station in perfect sequence. At the deboning station, meat was being separated from bone with precision. At the trimming station, excess fat was being removed. At the grading station, the product was being sorted by quality without error. At the packaging station, the product was being wrapped and sealed. The entire sequence was operating without interruption or misalignment. The work was flawless. I checked the power connections at the primary line control panel. Power was present. I checked the emergency cutoff switch, which is a large red lever mounted on the wall adjacent to the panel. I pulled it. The switch moved. The mechanical engagement engaged. I heard the solenoid click. The machinery did not stop. The conveyor continued moving. The deboning station continued its work. The trimming station continued its work. All of it continued. I pulled the emergency cutoff again. Same result. I checked the power supply at the main junction. Power was present. I traced the electrical line to the control panel. Everything appeared normal. The machinery should not have been operating. I documented this in my notebook. I noted the time as 7:32. Kowalski was standing near the entrance to the processing floor. I could see his hands were trembling. I asked him to turn off the facility's main power supply. He did not respond. I asked again. He said he could not do that. I asked why not. He said I should complete my inspection and leave. I continued my walkthrough. I observed the secondary lines. They were also operating at full capacity. I observed the quality control stations. The product was being inspected and sorted with no errors. I observed the packaging line. The product was being boxed and labeled correctly. Every station was functioning. Every process was executing without human intervention or visible mechanical failure. I attempted to shut down the secondary line using its emergency cutoff. The switch engaged. The machinery continued operating. I checked the power supply. Power was present. I checked the control panel. All systems showed normal operation. I documented this at 7:47. I returned to Kowalski. I told him that the facility was operating without workers, that the machinery was functioning despite emergency shutoffs being engaged, and that this constituted a critical safety violation. I told him I would be filing a report recommending immediate closure pending investigation. He did not argue. He asked me to complete my inspection and leave. He asked this several times. I completed my walkthrough of the remaining areas. The packaging area was functioning normally. The cold storage was maintaining proper temperature. The sanitation stations were clean. Everything was in order except for the absence of workers and the continued operation of machinery that should not have been running. I finished my inspection at 8:15. I filed my report as a critical safety violation requiring immediate shutdown. I classified the incident as machinery malfunction with unknown cause. I recommended that the facility cease operations until the electrical and mechanical systems could be thoroughly inspected. I submitted the report electronically at 8:32. That evening at 6 o'clock, I received a call from my supervisor. She told me to reclassify my inspection report as satisfactory. I told her that was not appropriate given what I had documented. She told me to reclassify the report anyway. She said the facility had been inspected by another team and found to be in full compliance. She said my field notes would be transferred to a restricted archive and that I should not discuss the inspection with anyone. I did not argue. I made the reclassification. 3 days later, the Heartland Processing Facility was listed as permanently closed due to voluntary cessation of operations. The closure was announced without explanation. No media coverage followed. No investigation was initiated. The facility remains closed. My field notes from that morning have been transferred to a restricted file. I have been reassigned to inspections in the Eastern District. I have not returned to that location. I have not received any further communication regarding the incident. The machinery was still running when I left the facility at 8:15. I did not see it stop. Story number 2, Visitor Log. I arrived at Mercy General Hospital in Hibbing at 200 hours to transport a psychiatric hold patient to the state facility in Bemidji. The transfer had been scheduled 3 weeks prior, routine work. I had done it 47 times before without incident. The charge nurse, whose name tag read Paulson, directed me to room 217 in the West Wing. She said the patient had been sedated per protocol and was ready for transport. The paperwork was already signed. She handed me a folder and gestured down the corridor. I acknowledged and proceeded. Room 217 was at the end of the hallway. I knocked before entering. The patient was restrained to the bed, facing the wall. I noticed the restraints were correct, wrists and ankles secured, bed rails locked. Standard configuration. But on the bedside table, I saw 3 copies of the transfer paperwork stacked neatly. Each was signed. Each signature was different, but each signature read Paulson, RN. I checked the dates on the forms. All from the same shift, all with different times of signature. The first was signed at 19:45, the second at 20:03, the third at 21:30. The patient turned their head, not their body, just their head, rotating 180 degrees until they were looking directly at me. Their shoulders remained parallel to the mattress. "Which version do you need me to sign?" the patient asked. Their voice was flat, medicated, but the question was precise. I did not respond. I pulled my secondary training binder from my jacket pocket. It was a gray folder, approximately 4 inches thick, issued during my certification renewal. I had never opened it. I had been told it contained protocols for situations outside standard procedure. I found the section marked Containment and Anomalous Presentation. The page was blank. I called dispatch on my radio and requested hospital security to room 217. I cited administrative concern. Dispatch acknowledged and said they would send someone. I waited. 5 minutes passed, then 10. No one arrived. I called dispatch again. This time I asked for confirmation that the protocol I was referencing existed in my certification manual. The dispatcher, a woman named Chen, said there was no such protocol in any manual she could access. She asked if I needed medical assistance. I said no and ended the transmission. I looked at the patient. They were still facing me, their head at that angle, their bodies still parallel to the bed. I opened the folder with the 3 forms and selected the first one, the one signed at 1945. I placed it on the clipboard. Before I could move toward the door, I noticed the hallway. It extended much farther than it should have. The nurse's station was visible at both ends of the corridor simultaneously. The distance appeared to be approximately 40 meters in each direction. That was impossible. The building's exterior dimensions, which I had reviewed during my initial briefing, did not accommodate such length. I made the decision to proceed with transport. I did not call dispatch again. I did not request additional clearance. I unstrapped the patient from the bed and applied the transport restraints, a padded vest with locking mechanisms at the shoulders and waist. The patient remained compliant throughout. I wheeled them to the gurney I had brought in and secured the straps. As I was pushing the gurney toward the exit, the patient began speaking. They recited my home address. Then they recited my daughter's school schedule. Monday through Friday, 8:15 in the morning to 2:40, 5 in the afternoon. The patient had no access to this information. Their file contained no personal data about me. I continued pushing. The drive to Bemidji took approximately 1 hour and 20 minutes under normal conditions. I maintained standard procedure. The patient remained silent after we left the hospital parking lot. I did not attempt conversation. I kept my eyes on the road. But I noticed the GPS. Our location was oscillating. For 17 minutes, the display showed our vehicle alternating between the highway north of Hibbing and the hospital parking lot. The coordinates shifted every 8 to 10 seconds. But I was driving continuously. The road beneath the vehicle did not change. The landscape visible through the windshield did not change, only the GPS shifted. At 23:54, the oscillation stopped. The GPS showed we were on the highway, approximately 30 kilometers from Bemidji. I continued driving. The patient did not move. I arrived at the state facility at 0123 hours. I pulled to the receiving entrance and called for transport staff. 2 orderlies came out with a wheelchair. I explained the transfer. They looked at their computer. They said they had no record of the transfer order. I showed them the first form, the one I had selected. They checked again. Still no record. They asked when the order had been placed. I said 3 weeks prior. They said their system showed no psychiatric hold for this patient. They said their system showed no admission scheduled. I asked them to check the patient's wristband. One of the orderlies approached the gurney and looked at the band. He said the discharge date was 4 days in the future. I did not argue. I did not request clarification. I told them I would contact the originating facility and resolve the administrative error. I returned to my vehicle and drove back to Hibbing. I did not transport the patient further. I filed the incident under Administrative Error Code 773. I wrote that the transfer order had not been properly entered into the state facilities system and that the patient would need to be rescheduled. I did not mention the 3 forms. I did not mention the hallway. I did not mention the GPS. I did not mention the address or the school schedule. My supervisor accepted the report without question. He reassigned me to daytime rotation effective immediately. I surrendered my secondary training binder to him without inventory. He placed it in a drawer in his office and did not acknowledge it further. The incident was closed and archived under Administrative Error Code 773. Story number 3, Clearance Level 3. I arrived at the Federal Office Complex in downtown Portland on a Tuesday morning in March of 2023. The assignment was routine, a system upgrade audit for their legacy database infrastructure, scheduled for 2 weeks. The facility occupied floors 7 through 12 of a building built in 1984. I had conducted similar audits at 14 other federal installations over the previous 6 years. The work was methodical and rarely presented complications. The IT director, a woman named Catherine Reeves, walked me through intake procedures. She was professional and thorough. During our review of outstanding maintenance tickets, she mentioned that 3 staff members had submitted identical help desk tickets at 7 minutes past midnight over the previous 4 nights. All 3 tickets were marked as resolved with no technical notes attached. She seemed uncertain whether this was unusual. I noted it, but did not flag it as significant at that time. I began the audit in server room B on the 9th floor. The room was climate controlled as required. I pulled environmental logs from the facility management system and found temperature fluctuations of 40 degrees Fahrenheit within 3-second intervals across the previous 72 hours. The fluctuations appeared in the data as legitimate readings, not sensor errors. The room itself felt consistently cool, approximately 68 degrees. I documented this discrepancy and continued with the hardware inventory. On the second day, at 2:15 in the afternoon, I initiated a backup process on the primary database array. The process completed in 8 seconds. The procedure should have required 4 hours. All verification checksums validated correctly. The data integrity appeared sound. No files were corrupted or missing. I ran the backup again. Same result. I documented both runs with timestamps and moved forward with the audit. That evening, I requested security footage from the facility's surveillance system. I needed baseline documentation of my work area for the audit record. The security office provided footage from the previous 48 hours. I reviewed it in a conference room on the 9th floor. The footage showed me entering server room B at 9:20 in the morning on Tuesday. That was accurate. I also appeared in the same room at 9:20 in the evening on Monday, the night before my arrival. I was standing motionless near the backup terminal. I was wearing the same clothes I had worn that morning. The timestamp was clear. The footage was continuous. No editing artifacts were visible. I contacted my regional supervisor, Marcus Webb, at 4:45 in the afternoon. I reported the environmental anomalies and the backup timing issue. I did not mention the security footage. He instructed me to continue documentation, but avoid filing the standard anomaly report through official channels. He said he would escalate the environmental data to the facilities team separately. He told me to proceed with the audit as planned. On the 3rd day, I worked through the morning and early afternoon without incident. I completed hardware inventory and began reviewing network architecture. At 6 in the evening, I was in the conference room reviewing documentation when I noticed the terminal in front of me displayed a command prompt I had typed earlier that morning. It was a specific query string had used to verify database connectivity. The text appeared on the screen without my input. I looked at the terminal's power status. It was off. I walked through the 9th floor. Every terminal that was powered on displayed the same command prompt. The copy room terminal displayed it. The break room television displayed it. The office manager's desk computer displayed it. I went to the 8th floor, same condition. I went to the 10th floor. The same command prompt was visible on every screen, including a printer display panel and a fax machine. All machines showed the text simultaneously, static and unchanging. I returned to server room B and powered off the primary array manually. I waited 5 minutes. I powered it back on. The command prompt remained on every screen in the building. I called Marcus Webb again. It was 9:15 in the evening. I reported what I was observing. He was silent for approximately 30 seconds. He instructed me to remain on site overnight, to document everything I witnessed, and to avoid discussing the situation with any facility staff. He said he would contact me by 8 in the morning. I spent the 4th night in the conference room. I did not sleep. I documented the status of every terminal I could access. The command prompt remained visible on all screens throughout the night. At 4 in the morning, the text changed. It displayed a different query string, one I had not typed. I did not recognize the syntax. I photographed the screens with my personal camera and continued monitoring. At 6:30 in the morning, the command prompts disappeared. Every screen returned to normal status. Powered on machines displayed their standard login screens. Powered off machines showed nothing. Marcus Webb called at 7:55 in the morning. He instructed me to suspend the system upgrade immediately. He told me to archive my findings to an off-network drive and to recommend the facility be scheduled for electrical infrastructure review rather than software migration. He said my audit report should be filed as incomplete due to equipment access limitations. I was to leave the building by 9 in the morning. I complied. I archived the environmental logs, the backup timing data, and my documentation of the terminal displays to an external drive. I did not include the security footage. I wrote the audit report as instructed, citing infrastructure concerns that required resolution before database migration could proceed safely. I did not specify the nature of those concerns. I left the building at 8:45 in the morning. 6 weeks later, the federal office complex was reassigned to administrative storage functions. The database migration project was canceled. I was transferred to hardware certification duties and assigned to a laboratory facility in Salem, Oregon. I have not been assigned another on-site database audit since. My off-network archive was collected by a courier 2 months after the Portland assignment. The drive was not returned. I was informed that my field notes had been reviewed and filed appropriately. No follow-up communication was provided. The incident is closed.